This is Noise from the Cranium. My name is Doug, and in this episode I'm going to take a look at another trend in popular music that was sparked by the studio experimentation of the Beatles. I'll take a look at the movement that they inspired, called Raga Rock. I'm also going to focus on the role that the sitar played in the Raga Rock and psychedelic movements of the mid to late 1960s. Although folk music in the early 60s flirted briefly with certain Indian styles of playing, it wasn't until the rock and pop world got involved that it truly exploded. In 1965, the Kinks released See My Friends, which used open-tuned guitars to imitate the drone produced by an Indian tambura. Although they did not use a sitar, the song is cited as the first pop song to evoke an Indian feel. Also in 1965, the Yardbirds were recording Heart Full of Soul. They brought a sitar and a tabla player into the studio, but the sitar player wasn't accustomed to playing Western pop music and couldn't get the right feel for the song. After a number of tries, guitarist Jeff Beck took a crack at it, emulating the sound of the sitar on his guitar. The song reached number 2 on the UK charts, so it probably worked out for the best. This is how the early demo sounded with the sitar. This is actually the first known recording of a sitar in rock music, although it was not released until much later. In April 1965, the Beatles were filming part of their movie Help in a mock-up of an Indian restaurant on the soundstage at Twickenham Film Studios in London. There were a few Indian musicians playing in the background, including a sitarist. George Harrison heard the music, had a look at the sitar, and was intrigued. Later, after Ravi Shankar's name kept coming up as an Indian sitarist to listen to, Harrison not only listened to Shankar, but purchased his own sitar from a shop in London. He felt an immediate connection to the music. In an inspired moment, when they were working on overdubs for the song Norwegian Wood in October, they began looking for something else to augment the sound. George picked up his newly purchased sitar, figured out the notes to the riff, and gave it a go. It fit perfectly. The popularity of Norwegian Wood inspired a wave of interest in the sitar and Indian sounds in general. In fact, Ravi Shankar dubbed the phenomenon the Great Sitar Explosion. After the Yardbirds, Kinks, and Beatles had success with these songs, the Byrds, also fascinated with Indian music, released 8 Miles High in March 1966. In a press release for the song, the Byrds' publicist at the time coined the phrase Raga Rock, although both David Crosby and Roger McGuinn would later dismiss the term. The song is also considered by many to be the first psychedelic song. In March of 1966, the Rolling Stones recorded their own Raga Rock song, Paint It Black. Stones guitarist Brian Jones used to hang out with George Harrison and developed the sitar riff for Paint It Black after a conversation with George regarding his use of sitar on Norwegian Wood. The song was a number 1 smash hit and has been cited as perhaps the best use of sitar in a rock song. Meanwhile, George Harrison was getting deeper into Indian music and spirituality. He wrote the song Love to You in early 1966, and aside from minor involvement from Paul and Ringo, recorded it using Indian musicians from the Asian Music Circle in London. It was released on the Beatles' album Revolver in August of that year. Each day just goes so fast. I turn around, it's past. You don't get time to hang a sign on me. The song was hailed as the first authentic representation of Indian music and Western pop culture, with no hint of parody. It certainly didn't sound like anything else on that album. 1966 was the start of a phenomenal run for the sitar in pop music. The music industry loves trends, and after the Beatles scored big with Norwegian Wood, other acts were scrambling to get on the bandwagon. The Monkees released their debut album in October 1966, and in keeping with the trend, included a sitar in their song, This Just Doesn't Seem to Be My Day.
I guess I should have stayed in bed, my pillow wrapped around my head.
Typical of music fads, the Indian raga rock phenomenon wasn't limited to the music. Transcendental meditation, yoga, and Nehru jackets all became key elements of the culture of the psychedelic 60s. Steve Winwood left the Spencer Davis Group to form Traffic with Jim Capaldi and Dave Mason in 1967, at the height of psychedelia. Their first single, Paper Sun, featured Dave Mason on the sitar. Released in May of 1967, it reached number 4 on the Canadian charts. As psychedelic music began to dominate the pop music world in 1967, it became clear that the sitar was a key element in defining that sound. At the same time, guitar manufacturer Danelectro introduced the choral electric sitar, making it a lot easier for rock musicians to have sitar in their music. There were a few one-hit wonders that capitalized on the sitar craze. The Lemon Pipers had been experimenting with a blues, rock, and folk style when they were signed to Buddha Records. Buddha already had the Ohio Express and the 1910 Fruit Gum Company in their roster, and they wanted the Lemon Pipers to pursue a pop style that was eventually labeled bubblegum pop. Their second single, recorded in this vein, was a massive number 1 hit in 1967, Green Tambourine. With the sound of the electric sitar, the song easily fit into the psychedelic scene. However, the band broke up in 1969 as they got tired of the record company pressure and wanted to pursue their own interests. Memphis band The Box Tops were formed in 1967 and struck gold with their first single, The Letter. The following year, with the help of session musician Reggie Young on sitar, they ended up with a number 2 hit with the song Cry Like a Baby. Released in February 1968, the song featured a 17-year-old Alex Chilton on vocals. Yes guitarist Steve Howe was a fairly steady user of the sitar. Beginning in 1968 with the psychedelic band at the time, Tomorrow, Howe added sitar to their song Real Life Permanent Dream. Not content with relegating the sitar to the psychedelic age, Howe used it quite a bit in Yes during the 70s. A couple of my favorites are the songs To Be Over and Siberian Katru. The sitar kept a high profile in 1968, with Joe South having a huge hit with Games People Play.
The games people play now, every night and every day now.
The song ended up winning a Grammy for Song of the Year. Rather than a traditional sitar, the song used the newly developed choral electric sitar. Eric Burdon and the Animals, who had played the Monterey Pop Festival in the summer of 1967, decided to capture the moment for posterity, writing the psychedelic classic called Monterey.
People came and listened.
The song name drops the big stars that played, using their instruments to backdrop the lyrics. Over the next few years, the sitar was virtually everywhere, being used by musicians as diverse as the Mamas and the Papas, Steppenwolf, the Moody Blues, Blue Cheer, the Pretty Things, the Fifth Dimension, Donovan, and even Elvis. Once the psychedelic 60s were gone, the use of the sitar in rock music waned as well. It did manage to pop up on a few songs over the years, like Steely Dan's classic song Do It Again, featuring Denny Dias on the electric sitar.
Jack, do it again.
Released in 1972, the song made it to number 6 on the US charts. Meanwhile, the following year, Genesis finally managed to get a single into the UK charts with their psychedelically tinged song I Know What I Like.
There's always been asshole. Jacob, wake up, you got to tidy your room now. Then Mr. Lewis, isn't it time that he was out on his own?
Although the sitar still manages to pop up from time to time, we likely won't see anything like the sitar heyday of the late 1960s. This has been Noise from the Cranium. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.